Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I'll analyze Donald Trump's election victory. First I'll start with the background, then move to my analysis. Donald Trump has been elected the President of the United States. He swept all the battleground states: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, at least based on the information that's available now. The polls predicted it would be a tight race, which was a great sign for Trump because he tends to underperform in polls. Trump is on track to win the popular vote as well, the first Republican presidential candidate to do so since 2004. Trump is only the second presidential candidate in history to be elected to a non-consecutive second term. Grover Cleveland was the first. He was the 22nd and 24th president. Donald Trump was the 45th president and will be the 47th president. 78-year-old Donald Trump is the oldest candidate to be elected president. Now moving to my analysis. Trump's victory has been called the greatest political comeback of all time. Why was Donald Trump elected? What are the factors that contributed to his victory? It seems unusual that a presidential candidate who was defeated in 2020 could come back and win in 2024. People talk about how Grover Cleveland did the same thing, so it's not unprecedented. However, Cleveland actually won the popular vote when he lost the election between his two victories, whereas Trump did not. That makes Trump's victory seem even more dramatic, more unexpected. With this in mind, here are some of the reasons I believe Donald Trump was victorious. Item number one. Even though Trump was defeated in 2020, he never really stopped running for president. He has been in the spotlight the entire time. Trump managed to stay relevant for 4 years. Most losing candidates are quickly forgotten, but nobody forgot Trump. Part of the reason he never faded into the background had to do with how he was targeted by multiple indictments. Trump may or may not be guilty in reality of these various offenses he was accused of, but many voters were skeptical of the motives behind prosecuting him. It appeared as though the authorities were trying to prevent Trump from running for president, like this was all political. Trump had actually lost a good deal of support from Republicans. He was a controversial candidate. But then the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, prosecuted him for falsifying business records. Many people believed this was ridiculous and clearly politically motivated. If anyone else had done what Trump did with the business records, they never would have been prosecuted. Furthermore, Trump was charged and ultimately convicted of felonies when he could have been charged with misdemeanors. Manhattan is one of the few places where a prosecutor could expect a jury to go along with a political prosecution of a Republican because most people there are Democrats. This Mickey Mouse prosecution consolidated Republican support behind Trump. Voters saw this as the government trying to take away their right to vote for him. People don't like being told who they can vote for and who they can't vote for, especially not by a prosecutor who is a member of the opposing political party. Convicting Trump was a novel tactic, but one that indicated how Alvin Bragg did not understand how people think. He did not comprehend human behavior. He believed he could do anything he wanted without consequences. Alvin was so wrapped up in his own quest for glory, he disregarded the feelings of many voters. Item number two, Donald Trump had a much different strategy than his opponent, Kamala Harris, as far as how to run a presidential campaign. Even though Harris raised more money, Trump appeared to be more personable and down to earth. People could relate to him. People could understand what he was thinking, whether they liked what he was thinking or not. For example, he appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience and talked for 3 hours. I have a separate video about that interview and its potential impact. Harris, on the other hand, appeared to be dodging the media, which is strange considering how the mainstream media was on her side. She was playing it too safe. Harris has a reputation for word salad, which may have been why she was avoiding interviews. She was worried about making an embarrassing mistake. She should have been worried about not swaying voters over to her side. Item number three, Trump and Harris promoted different policies. Ultimately, more Americans liked Trump's ideas. He focused on the economy, including getting inflation under control. There's the sense that Harris didn't understand how badly inflation affected so many people. The Biden administration had been criticized for what seemed like an open border immigration policy, whereas Trump promised to fight against illegal immigration. Many people are worried about immigration. Trump gained a lot of points on this issue. Another area of disconnect between Harris and voters was the expansion of the transgender ideology. Some people consider her viewpoint as anti-science because she wanted biological males to play in women's sports. Harris would have been a lot better distancing herself from this issue, but she chose not to. This made it seem like she leaned extremely far to the left. Item number 4, Kamala Harris replaced Joe Biden as the Democratic presidential candidate because Biden was exhibiting signs of cognitive decline. Yet she never explained her failure to sound the alarm on this issue. What was Harris waiting for? Would she have been fine supporting Biden even if he continued running for president? I think so. This makes her seem weak and ineffective, unwilling to stand up for what is right and true. Furthermore, Harris failed to disagree with Joe Biden on anything and was irrevocably tied to his unpopular policies. I don't think Harris made a good case for why she was a good choice for president. Rather, she spent a lot of time talking about how Trump was a bad choice. If Trump was elected, the world was going to explode, democracy would be over forever, on and on with the doom and gloom. Trump was president for 4 years, and none of that happened, but Harris never talked about that. Her strategy wasn't about convincing people to vote for her, but rather to vote against Trump. That's not necessarily a terrible tactic, but it's also important to give voters a reason to vote for you, not just against the other guy. Item number 5, Donald Trump overperformed in many different demographic categories. He performed well with men and with white voters without college degrees. Trump gained more votes than expected from Black and Latino voters. Harris simply did not get the votes that she thought she would get. Item number 6, I think the behavior of the media really helped Donald Trump. Historically, the mainstream media has leaned strongly to the left. This is not a secret. They advertise it all the time. Not surprisingly, they repeatedly ran negative stories about Trump. This was an everyday thing. Every time you look at the mainstream media, they were saying the same thing. It was just another way that Trump was scary or bad or was going to destroy the world or whatever they were accusing him of that day. They even glossed over the 2 assassination attempts. These stories affected people deeply. Many people were highly concerned about Trump's safety, but the media didn't care. The media was insensitive, callous, and manipulative. Even though their bad behavior was expected, the media made a massive blunder by implying that people who supported Trump were uninformed or otherwise bad. The media went too far when they started criticizing Trump supporters. Harris tried to back away from this, but again, she was tied to the media. They were on the same team. Joe Biden did not help the situation when he made unwise comments suggesting that Trump supporters were garbage. I'm not sure that's what he was trying to say, but even saying anything remotely like that was a major mistake. This was Joe Biden's final gift to Kamala Harris, one that she probably wished she could return. Now moving to my final thoughts. What lessons can be learned from Donald Trump's victory? I have a few ideas. When the media keeps calling a candidate a bad and dangerous person, they imply the candidate's supporters are bad and dangerous people. The key to avoiding this problem is to report the news fairly. Publish both good and bad stories about each candidate. Being honest and unbiased would have helped the media a lot. This idea never occurred to them. Americans don't want the authorities to pursue political prosecutions. By electing Trump, voters clearly rebuked the people who indicted him. The economy and immigration are 2 issues which a lot of people are concerned about. It's easy for people who are wealthy to be dismissive about money problems, yet Trump talked about the working class all the time. He was highly focused on the economy and on how illegal immigration could negatively affect the economy. I think the primary message of Donald Trump's victory is the importance of candidates not ignoring what voters want. If voters believe an issue is important, then it's important. It's as simple as that. Being an effective candidate is really about having empathy. That is, being able to cognitively understand what other people are feeling. There's not a lot of empathy going around these days, especially in politics. Over the years, I've made a lot of videos about politics. I have stated many times that I was not a fan of either presidential candidate. I didn't think they did the best job of representing the ideals of their respective parties. A lot of people feel the same way, but one of them had to win. This is how democracy works. There will always be a winner and a loser. Some people will be very happy with the election result. Other people will be terrified. I think it's important for people to move forward after the election. The decision has been made. The nation has spoken. Perhaps Donald Trump will use his position to bring people together. His victory was definitive. Again, it looks like he will win the popular vote in addition to sweeping all the battleground states. Trump has promised to usher in a golden age of America. I hope this is a promise he can fulfill. One of the things I've noticed about politics lately, which has kind of always been the case to some degree, but it seems more evident in the last few years, is how people are very angry about the political candidates and the people who support the political candidates. So it seems like the anger has extended beyond just the candidates. So years ago, a candidate was good or bad, depending on someone's political beliefs. So they would look at a candidate, like a presidential candidate, and they would say, well, I don't like them. I like the other person. But it wasn't so much about the supporters. It wasn't about hating half the country. And I feel like politics has really become that way now. It's like a war. It's like people look at their fellow Americans and decide if they're good or bad based on their political persuasion. It's a bad trend. It's a negative trend. I think it's harmful. It's toxic, really. And it's something that has been expanding. I think both sides are to blame to some extent. I don't know if this is really a issue that's particular to one party. Maybe this is just a product of disagreement. Maybe Americans disagree very sharply about issues now, and they didn't disagree as much in the past. I don't know. I mean, if we look through history, people disagreed a lot on a lot of different issues, but they were able to disagree. They were able to look at their fellow Americans as human beings who had different thoughts and feelings, who had a legitimate way of analyzing data and coming to conclusions. They might have not had the same opinion, like they might have questioned the process to get to various conclusions, but they respected it to some degree. They respected that voters voted for reasons that made sense. People have different opinions, even looking at the same data. Now it seems like everybody expects the same interpretation. Everybody with a particular persuasion looks at the world and says, okay, the way I analyzed all this information is the only way it can be analyzed. And the way I interpreted the data is the only way they can be interpreted. That's it. It's just a very narrow perspective. There's no room for disagreement. There's no room for looking at information and drawing a different result. I don't know if that's the problem. I don't know if that's what's changed, but it seems like that's what's changed. There's been a general lack of respect between the parties. I don't think that a particular candidate winning or losing changes that. I think this is something that each person has to decide. Will we learn to disagree again? I think that by learning to disagree, we could actually move forward. Another part of this is I think there's an intolerance with people not getting their way. There's no real solution for this except for acceptance, for just looking at what is true and saying, okay, it is true. I get it. Like there's no denying what's happened. But I feel like there is a lot of denial out there now. There's denial about all kinds of issues. So this has been highlighted, I think, too, in recent times, like looking at election results and denying them, and looking at clearly political prosecutions and denying them. Like it's very easy to deny factors that seem to be quite true. That seems to be a popular trend, just looking at something as true and saying, no, it's not true. I believe what I believe, therefore reality must bend to my belief system. It's not really realistic. So part of this might be an erosion of critical thinking skills. Or like I said, maybe people just are much different now, right? The sides are more polarized. People are further to the right or further to the left or both. I don't know. It'd be worthwhile for somebody to find out, though, to research this as a topic and try to determine what's happened, to look at Donald Trump's victory and the campaigns leading up to this victory and really try to understand what's going on with how people view the world. I don't know if that'll yield any results, but I think that people are more upset than they've ever been about politics. It's never been a topic that makes everyone happy, of course, but people are just so angry these days. It's such a change from the past. Those are my thoughts on Donald Trump's victory. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.